I'm Eric Anderson. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, border officials will have to revamp their practices in dealing with deportations, all because of a court settlement with the ACLU. We'll explain.
We are learning more about a former San Diego City College student killed while fighting with Islamic extremists in Syria. I'm Amitha Sharma. We'll look at what attracts young Americans into violent terrorist groups, and smartphones will soon need to have kill switches installed. But will that help stop cell phone theft? We'll take a look at how the new technology will work.
This is the right to vote on the minimum wage referendum.
The debate over San Diego's minimum wage has now grown to include a debate over the referendum drive, with each side accusing the other of playing dirty. And some Padres fans are crying foul over a plan to name a slice of Petco Park for the outgoing baseball commissioner. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Dwayne Brown is off tonight. A settlement announced today between the ACLU and the Department of Homeland Security will affect how immigrants can be deported. The American Civil Liberties Union lawyers in San Diego say over the past 5 years, thousands of undocumented immigrants have been swiftly expelled from Southern California to Mexico without talking to a lawyer. They say the immigrants were pressured into signing voluntary departure forms, assuring their problems could be sorted out in Mexico and they'd be legally reunited with family members in the U.S. But ACLU attorney Sean Reardon says immigrants are banned from legal reentry for 10 years. He says the settlement puts an end to a practice that tears families apart.
The government has agreed to no longer use any sort of misinformation or pressure to try to convince somebody to take voluntary departure as opposed to seeing an immigration judge. In addition to that, the government has agreed to provide additional advisals to people of the consequences of signing for voluntary departure.
The settlement would also let some who were voluntarily deported between 2009 and 2013 return to the United States for immigration hearings. Now, the deal is still waiting court approval. We've learned a bit more tonight about the former San Diegan killed last weekend while fighting with Islamic militants in Syria. The FBI says Douglas MacArthur McCain was one of 100 Americans who went to Syria. He's believed to be the first American killed while fighting with the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria. That's ISIS. Amitha Sharma has more on what sends Americans into the front line with extremists.
U.S. officials say they're using every tool they can to stop Americans from traveling abroad to wage jihad. But those tools failed to dissuade former San Diego City College student Doug McCain, who was killed over the weekend fighting on behalf of the Islamic State, a group so brutal that al-Qaeda has broken ties with it, a group so feared the U.S. calls it the biggest threat to American security since 9/11. Joining me to talk about how and why some young Americans are lured into terrorism are San Diego State University professor Deepak Gupta and UCSD economics professor Ellie Berman, author of Radical, Religious, and Violent, The New Economics of Terrorism. Professor Gupta, Doug McCain loved basketball. He was a Chicago Bulls fan. His mother was a churchgoer. He did drop out of high school. He did have run-ins with the law for petty violations. Still, how does someone like that travel to a foreign land, join a terrorist group responsible for beheadings, amputations, rapes, and public whippings?
Well, children they are not born like Rosemary's Baby with eyes turning colors when they're born. They go through transformation. Part of their lives, they look for identities as they grow up. And sometimes the search for identity, the search for doing something much larger than who they are, what their immediate personal concerns are, become all-consuming. And this is reinforced when they come across information that they know a very little about, but it's compelling. And this I find to be the common thread among all the jihadis who have gone over to fight for ISIS, al-Nusra, or any other radical groups.
Professor Berman, it's estimated that as many as thousands of people are fighting on behalf of the Islamic State, and they carry either U.S. passports or European passports. The worry is that they will eventually return to their homeland and commit terrorist acts. How big of a threat is that?
It's a threat, and I think a month ago we would have said, it's a tiny, tiny threat, don't worry about it. But I think a couple of things have changed. So let's just put this in context. Just because someone's willing to go and fight against the oppression of Sunnis in Syria or the oppressions of Sunni in Iraq doesn't mean that they want to come back to the United States and be jihadist. That's unlikely. And yet it happened, right? It happened in the French case, where someone who went over, fought with the Islamic State in Syria, went back to France and then attacked a Jewish museum in Belgium. Not only did it happen, but the French lost track of him and allowed that to happen. And so that's a warning right there. The other thing is, we didn't think that ISIS really had a problem with the West or with the United States until the beheading, the brutal, egregious beheading of a journalist, James Foley, just last week.
So what can be done to stop recruitment?
Recruitment of Americans to go do something which they think, as Deepak says, is a cause that protects Sunnis in some warped, crazy way. And I want to emphasize, it's the fringe of American Muslims who would even think that this makes any sense. And yet there are people in that fringe. What can we do about it? Probably not a lot. You know, the war with ISIS, this instability in Iraq and Syria, if we don't do something about that instability, it could be there for a generation.
So I want to talk to you about this, Professor Gupta. The Islamic State has redrawn boundaries in Syria and Iraq in a very short period of time. Does this represent an intelligence failure on the part of the United States? I mean, how did this slip beneath the radar?
Well, I don't think it's an intelligence failure. For example, the Soviet Union collapsed right before our eyes. Very few people could have predicted that the Soviet Union is going to implode like that. The Egyptian government fell apart. No, it's not really an intelligence failure. In my mind, it just happened. A lot of different factors that conspired, all the stars lined up and created this movement. And it may so happen that it can lose its momentum very quickly as well.
Professor Berman, actually this is connected to that. You know, ISIS has been described as having global aspirations. Is that hyperbole, or do you think that there's some merit to that?
I don't think they have global aspirations, but we get in their way when we start fighting for the Iraqis, and the Russians will get in their way if they start fighting for the Syrians. And so I think that there's no way that the United States cannot become involved with ISIS. And this could go on for quite a while.
And we've got to close it there. Professor Berman, Professor Gupta, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
It has been less than a week since business groups started collecting the 34,000 signatures that they need to overturn the city of San Diego's minimum wage increase. KPBS reporter Claire Tregeser says the effort has already turned nasty, and there are accusations of lies and aggression on both sides.
A signature gatherer at the Home Depot in Claremont wouldn't give his name, but his pitch to people entering the store is accurate.
What is this for?
For stopping the increase in minimum wage for San Diego.
Signs hanging from his table also clearly state his purpose. This man says he's from San Diego, but some signature gatherers travel into the city. Business groups have until mid-September to get the almost 34,000 signatures needed to overturn the minimum wage increase. A group called Raise Up San Diego is trying to stop them. They say signature gatherers are lying to voters to get them to sign their petitions. That's illegal, but very tough to prove in court.
These are out-of-town folks coming in, simply trying to say anything and everything to get you to put your name on that petition. And at the end of the day, they leave town and you're left holding the basket.
With the state already voted on it, it's going to go up to like 11.20, I think it is.
Okay.
And then on top of that, the city wants to get it up. I think they want to get it to like 15, which is what Seattle what Seattle has done. And
That's a video someone sent to Raise Up San Diego of a signature gatherer with an inaccurate pitch. Jason Rowe, a spokesman for the business groups opposing the increase, says they're working to find out who's in the video and says he will fire him.
There's no reason for us to mislead the voters on our petition because the message that we're delivering is the strongest message possible. Allow the voters of San Diego to have a right to vote on this issue.
Ma'am, can I get your signature for the right to vote on the minimum wage referendum, please? Thank you.
KPBS put a microphone on a signature gatherer to see what she says. Carolyn, who would only give her first name, knew she was being filmed and made an accurate pitch.
This just puts the issue on the ballot so the voters can educate themselves on it and decide if they want the increase or don't. City council's voted for it. Mayor feels it's a bad idea. So let's educate ourselves and decide one way or the other.
I thought they were already going to do that.
City council's approving it, but the mayor feels that there are some problems with it and feels that we shouldn't do it. And I feel that if there is conflict and they're not agreeing, that the voters should look at the entire content and make sure they agree. You're just putting it on the ballot. You're not voting one way or the other.
Carolyn says she's paid about $2 a signature and earns less than the minimum wage.
Thank you for taking the time.
She has worked on other petition drives in the past.
This one I feel much stronger about, but I felt strong about this issue, the other issues. But this one I really feel it needs to be on the ballot.
KPBS also asked San Diegans to send us their experiences with signature gatherers in the past week. Some said they were told the petition was to raise the city's minimum wage. That's not right. But there have also been Raise Up San Diego volunteers hawking their own petition. Two were at the Claremont Home Depot asking people to sign a pledge not to sign the other petition.
Not sign the petition, folks, for Village San Diego.
Sound confusing? Raise Up San Diego says they're asking for signatures both as a commitment to not signing the official petition and to recruit volunteers. This customer couldn't make sense of who was saying what.
The way it was described to me was the opposite of what I thought I wanted to have happen. I said to the petition person, wait, explain it to me, carefully here.
Kennington supports raising the minimum wage, but says the petitioner confused her with vague language. Once she figured it out,
I went back, crossed it all out.
That's one less signature toward the total, but there's still 3 weeks left.
And I'll need your last name here also.
Rose says he's confident they'll get at least 50,000 signatures.
So go ahead. Are you a voter at your current address?
More than enough to force the increase on the ballot, likely in June 2016. Claire Tregesser, KPBS News.
Video journalist Katie Shulov helped produce that story. You can find all of our coverage of the minimum wage debate online at kpbs.org. There is another petition drive just started in San Diego, and you don't have to leave your house for this one. It's over a plan to rename a plaza at Petco Park for outgoing baseball commissioner Bud Selig. The plan for the Selig Hall of Fame Plaza was announced yesterday. The social media backlash started today. Padres fans complaining that Selig has no connection to the team. They've started a petition on change.org asking the Padres to change their minds. Some of the fans are suggesting the plaza should be named for the late Tony Gwynn. Some fans are suggesting the plaza name is an effort to get a future All-Star game at Petco. Last night, Selig did tell the Padres broadcast team that he likes the chances for a midsummer classic at Petco. The last time San Diego hosted the All-Star game was back in 1994. And that was known then as it was played in the Jack Murphy Stadium back then. San Diego residents and lawmakers are blasting a congressional proposal that could eliminate home delivery of mail. Now, the idea is to save the federal agency money.
No to the cluster boxes. Thank you.
David Moti says cluster mailboxes have no place in his Talmadge neighborhood. He says they'll clutter up the sidewalks, create litter, and encourage crime.
Even though this is a safe neighborhood, it's had its share of mail thefts with the package delivery on the front doors. We've had that issue certainly around the holiday times. So I would fully expect that at some point our cluster boxes, if we got them, would be broken into.
Representative Susan Davis says a provision in the Postal Reform Act calls for the creation of cluster mailboxes in all neighborhoods over the next 10 years. She's introduced a measure to block the plan. Davis calls it a bad idea that would outrage the Postal Service's most loyal customers.
It's American. They really have bonded
with their postal carriers over the years and with their postal service. And for many, many people, just the presence of a mail carrier in their neighborhood is a comforting, reliable feeling that the mail is on its way.
The Postal Service lost $5 billion last year, in large part because of congressionally mandated requirements to contribute money to the agency's pension fund. Representative Scott Peters says Congress should let the Postal Service work out how to make its own money-saving changes.
We know that there are challenges. We know that the economy is changing. We know that that every business is challenged to keep up with the competition. It's no different with the Postal Service. We have to empower them to make the changes.
Congress is currently in recess. Lawmakers are due to return to the Capitol in September. Reports of cell phone thefts are on the increase, and more thefts are becoming violent. Amitha Sharma takes a look at how technology and a new California law may help out.
More than 3 million Americans had their smartphones stolen last year, according to Consumer Reports. This week, California Governor Jerry Brown signed legislation requiring cell phone companies to install kill switches for phones made after July 1st of next year. The switches make the phones inoperable, and the hope is they will deter thieves. San Diego Police Lieutenant Kevin Mayer joins me now. How big of a deterrent do you think that these kill switches will actually be?
Any type of technology that will help prevent people from being victims is a good thing. I'm going to go back a few years. I was assigned to a command. We saw a significant rise in cell phone thefts and robberies. And what we were finding is these little stores had popped up and they were buying the phones with no questions asked. And so that was the target. The cell phone was the target. And so I started making, myself at the time, I was reaching out to some of the different cell phone companies to see if there's any way they could make the phone have no value and it would be useless to anybody other than the operator, the person that actually owns the phone.
And these days, people store all sorts of personal information
Yes.
on their cell phones. How devastating is it when a cell phone is stolen?
Oh, there's so much information on there, absolutely. And backing that information up and having it in another location where you can get to it if you need it is important.
How prevalent is smartphone theft here in San Diego?
I've just recently looked at the last statistics, and we're doing fiscal year for us, a new fiscal year for us begins July 1st. And we've seen, comparing 2013 to 2014, we've seen a rise in robbery-related thefts, or robbery-related cell phone thefts that have gone up about 9%, and then just thefts of cell phones have gone up about 13% in that 1 year.
And why do you think they've gone up?
There's a demand. People are either using them for personal use, they're selling them, or they're gathering information from them for other uses.
Now, you mentioned robbery-related cell phone thefts.
Yeah.
The cell phone thefts up north have been particularly violent. Are they getting more violent here in San Diego, or is that not the case?
It ranges across. We've got robberies is taking something from somebody by force or fear. Typical, you would see somebody with a gun pointed at you, but it's also using physical force. A beatdown would be, trying to take it from somebody and punching them. That would be a robbery. But we've seen it with guns being used to steal cell phones, all the way to a person being beaten, to somebody holding it and then it's snatched out of their phone, or leaving it on a table and somebody steals it, leaving it in a car and it's being stolen. So it goes across the gamut.
Now, there seems to be quite a bit of cell phone theft on college campuses, like here at San Diego State University. Why is that?
It's I haven't looked at specifically the locations where they're being stolen, and this, I want to point out, is not unique to just San Diego. It's occurring nationally. But again, it's occurring everywhere. It's occurring in every command, perhaps on every campus. People with a cell phone can always be a target.
And how does the San Diego Police Department respond to a cell phone theft? How seriously is it taken?
Oh, it's taken very seriously. During that one, going a few years back, that example I gave, we targeted the businesses that were buying them. We were getting intel from the suspects telling us what was occurring and how they were selling them. And we went after those businesses. We did search warrants. We recovered hundreds and hundreds of phones. Several people were arrested. And so we take these very seriously.
And do you ever find the phones?
Yes, they frequently, we found, well, like again, we recovered hundreds. Unfortunately, people don't document their serial numbers and the numbers that would help us get the phone back to the person. But there are quite often occasions where we are able to get the phone back to the person.
Okay. Now, the law requiring smartphones to have these kill switches actually only requires them to have the kill switches after July 1st of next year. In the meantime, what sort of tips can you offer people to prevent thefts?
Yes, passcode protect your phone. The technology exists out there right now that people can either activate on their phone or download. In most cases, I would suggest that they go out and do that so that they can get that on their phone. But the most important tip is to be aware of your surroundings. A phone, by its very nature, basically detracts from us doing that because we're just so focused on the text message or responding back or talking. Being aware of your surroundings will help prevent you from being a victim because suspects often rely on the element of surprise.
Okay, and we also have tips on our webpage.
Yes.
Lieutenant Mayor, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you.
2 San Diego County schools are part of a program teaching students the building trades. KPBS education reporter Matt Bowler is in the newsroom to tell us a bit more about it. Matt, what's the new program and which schools are it in?
Well, the schools are Hoover High and North County Trade Tech High School in Vista. They're 2 of the 9 schools from across the state that are participating in this pilot project. It's designed by the California Department of Education and many of the large labor unions like the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. The idea is to put students through this pre-apprenticeship program so that when they graduate, they can land jobs that are better than entry level.
Now, is the coursework all set up and are they going to be starting this fall?
Well, at Hoover High, they're starting the pre-apprenticeship training this semester, but Hoover already has a construction program, and the new state program integrates very easily. Eventually, the curriculum is going to involve more than construction training. In January, teachers participating in this program from across the state are going to meet at UC Berkeley to modify the curriculum so that it meets the University of California and California State University standards. That means that these kids will not only be able to work towards a trade, but they'll be able to work towards college as well. And I spoke with Hoover High's Angie Kania, and she says that kids in trade programs who today don't think college is for them may not think that tomorrow.
Students who are not, or say to themselves, I'm not college ready, I'm not interested in college, may change their mind. And that will lead them into, if they do decide to go to college and they're ready, into an education that will allow them to be in management and higher paying jobs as well. So we don't want to close any of those pathways.
Kania says that Hoover High is trying to give every student career path training. She even says that kids who think they only need college prep could benefit greatly from the real-world experience of job training.
KPBS education reporter Matt Bowler. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
I'm Gwen Eiffel. On the next News Hour, we look at what it takes to free captured Americans, the complex backstory. That's Wednesday on the PBS News Hour.
For the past decade, Barbarella Focus has been writing her popular column, Diary of a Diva, at the San Diego Reader. Now she's released her first book, Diary of a Diva, Behind the Lipstick, and continues to bear all in her distinctly comical, poignant, and honest stories. KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando tries to keep up with Barbarella to see what it takes to be a diva with a new book.
Hi, I'm Barbarella Focus, and I'm about to put on my makeup. I don't know that there is every diva is different, so I don't know that there is a diva look per se, but my look is all about the brows and the lips. So I call this putting on my face. Highlight the brow, and then expensive, cheap. Makeup ready. As diva-esque as things may sound, I like things simple. Done. It's so easy. Sequins, lots. Feather, too much? Too much feather? Ready to go! It's KPBS, don't curse. It's never not lipstick time. It's noisy in here. I like, how are they going to handle the books? Who's going to come over? How's it going to work? Do I stamp? What if I spell something wrong? What if I forget what to say? I don't know. Okay, so we are at Solare Ristorante in Liberty Station at my book launch party and signing. And it's my 10th anniversary of The Reader, which is why you saw those earlier. I'm ready with my books. I've got bookmarks to put in them. And I've got my stamp and my pens. I'm ready. I'm going to reply and give you a hug. Like, Yeah, divas aren't supposed to get nervous. So, Diary of a Diva, Behind the Lipstick. I have a column in the San Diego Reader called Diary of a Diva, have for 10 years. So for this book, I went through over 500 columns, selected 50, and then added commentary. So they're organized. It's not like, random short stories. There is an order to them, and the commentary is all new. Not only by me, but also by my husband, David, who has always been written about, but now has a chance for rebuttal. So instead of just, the usual memoir, which are great, and I love reading them, the characters I write about get a chance to speak. David gets to talk. It's a tiny with commentary by David Voges.
The Weather Service says the high surf will continue at the beaches through tomorrow night. Coastal temperatures will be around 80 degrees for the next couple of days. Hotter for the inland valleys, upper 80s to low 90s. Mountain temperatures in the mid 80s. And for the desert, sunny and very hot. Tonight's stories are online at kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks very much for joining us. Hope you have a great evening.